We've seen a lot of different fighters grow in Dragon Ball Super. Obviously there's Goku and Vegeta, but also more recently, we've seen Gohan, Piccolo, and even Frieza grow a lot stronger than they were before. Dragon Ball Super has a big focus on breaking limits. Although there's not too much focus on some of the other characters, mainly the Earthling Z fighters. They've actually grown a considerable amount, but it's kind of vague as to how strong they are. So how strong have they actually grown? Where are they at today? And on top of that, who is the strongest Earthling fighter? That's what we're here to cover today. Obviously there's a couple different people that I could focus on, but let's focus on the top 5. And that top 5 is pretty obvious. It consists of Chiaotzu, Yamcha, Roshi, Krillin, and Tien. I did want to spend some time talking about Yajirobe, but there's not really much to talk about with him. He doesn't seem to fight at all anymore and never was too proactive with training in the first place, even back in the Saiyan saga. Although I will make one note about him, his last stated power level was in Weekly Shonen Jump, which also is consistent with Daizenshuu 7, putting him at a power of 970, which is actually pretty impressive. Had he kept up with his training, he probably could have been on this list too, since he was actually stronger than Chiaotzu in the Saiyan saga. But unlike him, Chiaotzu actually has shown up in other arcs, and seemingly has trained a bit too. But Yajirobe is still pretty impressive because at that power level, he could pretty casually destroy a moon. And he did have some pretty impressive feats because he was able to damage Vegeta with his katana, which might not seem like much, but even at his very weakest, Vegeta was still way more powerful than everyone else. But that's where we'll leave off with him because there's not really any other feats beyond that. Maybe someday we'll see that he's been secretly training this whole time. Kinda like Roshi, I guess. So I'm going to scale the next 5 people to Goku, as well as to each other. We'll rank them from weakest to strongest, and we're going to see what level they're at. We'll discuss the feats they're capable of, as well as their destructive power. But before we do that, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, and you'll see why in a minute. But before that tangent, big thanks to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video, and since we're teaching some things in this video, Professor Death Knight's got a nice lesson for us too.
Professor Death Knight here with a lesson about Live Arena, the new PvP mode where you can fight against other players in real time. Sounds terrifying? Well, so's going to the dentist. You should still do it. Live Arena has a draft feature where you can pick and ban champions to fight for you. Teamwork. When you win matches, you'll get Live Arena crests towards unlocking special area bonuses, or so I hear. I'm too afraid to try any of this out. Alright class, any questions?
So a jump start in the game would help me with Live Arena, right?
That's right.
So you're aware of the special offers that Raid's giving everyone in this video, right?
Say that again. What?
Well, can I teach the class for a bit?
That's perfect.
Well, for one, all new players get access to Stag Knight, and a skin designed by JonTron for Stag Knight. Just use the promo code JTSkin before October 7th, and existing members can get him from an event. On top of that, you can get Sun Wukong, Raid's take on the Monkey King from Journey to the West, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Just log on for 7 days between now and October 23rd. And if you scan my QR code or use the link in my description, you get the Epic Champion Drake from the Lizardman faction, as well as a bunch of other insane bonuses for you. And class, be sure to find me in game under the name Salad Saiyan. Once again, just use that QR code or the link in the description, and hop on Raid right now to get these awesome offers. Thanks again to Raid for sponsoring this video. Alright, now time for that tangent. So first of all, I want to mention scaling them currently is pretty strange due to the separate continuities. They actually do have a pretty decent role in the Moro arc, and they do have some feats there, but we obviously don't know how the Moro arc lines up with the anime continuity since they're both separate, especially because none of them outside of Krillin have had a role in either of the movies. The last time they appeared was the Tournament of Power, and that's only for Tien, Roshi, and Krillin. So I'm going to use this as a disclaimer. The anime and the manga scale very differently, and I'll mention this throughout. We're going to theorize where they might be in the current anime's continuity, based on what happened in the Moro arc, and assuming that some of the same stuff's going to happen there, because a lot of the major plot points, they're probably going to be adapted in a similar way in the anime once that gets animated. Or I guess if it gets animated, because we still don't know at this point. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because the Moro arc gives them some really good feats, and you can consider this me wanking them since I'm using manga feats in the anime continuity, but again, let's think of it like this, and I'll stress this throughout the video too. My scaling will be based on a hypothetical anime Moro arc, and I'll keep it reasonable. Let's actually start off with the anime just so we can stay in the same continuity. This is a really important feat here, and this is the tangent I was talking about. We're going to be talking about Kachi. If you don't know what that is, it's the material that the Tournament of Power ring was made of. I promise this has a point and it's going to help us scale them really easily. So in the Tournament of Power, a lot of people were capable of destroying this material. Even the weakest fighters from the other universes were capable of doing so. But everyone in Universe 7 was able to do the same thing, including the human fighters. Tien was actually shown doing so. And obviously Roshi and Krillin are in the same ballpark in terms of strength. But we'll get more into that later on. I'm just setting a baseline here. The reason this is even impressive in the first place and is a baseline for their power is because we actually have a direct comparison to how strong you need to be to do this. So Kachi is a stronger version of Kachi, which was introduced in the Buu saga. If you remember the scene where Gohan broke his Z-sword, that's the material that caused it to break. So let's talk about that more. This is base Gohan after his training with the Z-sword, where he was noted to have grown stronger too. How much stronger we can't really quantify, but it's safe to assume that everyone thought that with the Z-sword's power, he would be able to defeat Buu. Shin was really confident in this too. He also witnessed and felt the strength of Goku, Gohan, and Vegeta. So I think it's safe to say that in base, at this point in the story, base Gohan could be stronger than base Goku and Vegeta. And while we can't get an exact estimate because there's not really a direct comparison, we can safely say that base Gohan after training with the Z-Sword, he's definitely stronger than the Gohan that we saw before, especially because he likely got a boost in power from nearly dying. And in base here, he wasn't able to break Kachin. You could argue that's because the Z-Sword's weak, but I would say no. The only reason I say that is because we have another direct comparison. Trunks has shown against King Cold that swords are only as strong as their users, and obviously Gohan's not as experienced with the sword as Trunks is. But he would at least know that principle. He's seen Trunks doing that, and he swung around the sword for about a day, and he probably knows how to channel his ki through other objects like that. With all this in mind, I think it's very reasonable to assume that Gohan knows how to channel his ki into his sword to make it as strong as he is. So we could say safely that Gohan himself was responsible for not breaking the Kachin, rather than the sword being at fault. So base Busaga Gohan can't break Kachin. Meanwhile, in the Tournament Power, they're using a stronger version of Kachin, and people were able to break it relatively easily. Not only is this a stronger version of Kachin, but it's apparently the strongest thing in the multiverse. We don't know how much stronger, but at bare minimum, let's say it's only 2 times stronger. That's being really conservative with it. It could be 10 times stronger, it could be 100 times, we don't know. And with that in mind, you could say that anyone capable of breaking Kachin should be at least a few times stronger than base Busaga Gohan after training. It's hard to calculate the durability of this material since both are fictional. But again, let's be conservative with it. Let's say regular Kachin is only harder than the strongest thing in our universe. One of the hardest things in our universe would be nuclear pasta, which is found on a neutron star. So it's fair to say that someone capable of breaking Kachin is capable of destroying a neutron star, which isn't that absurd of a feat in the series because star busting has been in there for a while, even at that point in Z. So putting that all together, at absolute low ball, someone capable of destroying Kachin is at neutron star level, which essentially is large star level due to the mass of a neutron star and such. And someone capable of breaking Kachin is even stronger than that. We can't necessarily say how much stronger, but at the very least, 2 times stronger as a conservative baseline. I know that was a long tangent about fictional materials, but it's important. Because again, this establishes a very conservative baseline that at bare minimum, Tien, Krillin, and Roshi scale to large star level. In the Tournament of Power, not even beyond that. So now let's go on to the actual fighters themselves. We'll start with Chiaotzu because he doesn't really have too many feats. Chiaotzu has one really impressive feat, although you could argue that this was in filler, but still, it's worth mentioning because people will mention if I don't talk about it. He was able to actually paralyze a post-Universe 6 tournament Goku, which is incredibly impressive considering the fact that base Goku here, he could soul anyone from Z. Granted, Goku was off guard, and the second he started struggling, Chiaotzu wasn't able to hold him that well, but still, this is a really impressive feat even if it isn't filler, which should correlate to Chiaotzu's own strength in terms of what he could lift and such. Beyond that, Chiaotzu doesn't really have any feats in terms of strength. Even in the Moro saga, we don't see him fighting. But obviously he is stronger as a fighter, especially because he's been spending his time training with Tien. Pretty much constantly it seems, because even back in the Buu saga we saw this, and he's at Tien's dojo the entire time. He wasn't involved in the Android saga because Tien noted he couldn't keep up, so it's interesting that he was involved in the Moro arc here. Without feats, it's a bit hard to quantify him, but at bare minimum, with all that training and with his power level being stated at a 610 in the Saiyan saga, it's pretty safe to say that by now Chiaotzu's probably at least large planet level, since he was large moon level in the Saiyan saga. And this is a pretty conservative estimate too because it's been nearly 2 decades since then. And even if his training wasn't rigorous, he has been constantly training. But unfortunately, with his only feat being paralyzing Goku and filler, it's kinda tough to theorize where he would be here. His only fight in the Moro arc was against a Metal Man who they defeated by insulting, so even that's not really a good judge of how strong he is. As for the next 4, they have some feats that we can go off of, and that Tournament of Power feat that I was talking about, that applies to all of them. Let's start talking about Roshi. Before the Tournament of Power, when possessed he was able to beat Tien, although it was confirmed by a writer that possession did buff him by a bit. But still, it's worth noting because that means at the very least, he's relative to where Tien and Krillin are. But he's likely weaker than them because in the Moro arc it further confirms that Yamcha is one of the 3 strongest humans on Earth. Likely it would mean that Roshi's at number 4, and we'll get more into that later, but that's how I'm going to rank it here. But unlike Chiaotzu, that doesn't mean Roshi's in a completely different league of strength below them. He should still be fairly close. With all the experience of the Tournament of Power plus Piccolo's training before the Moro arc, obviously he has grown stronger. And like I mentioned in the Tournament of Power, he's relative to where Tien was. And once again, I will stress, these are different continuities. The whole thing with Roshi being possessed didn't even happen in the manga. But to power scale the humans, we're going to use everything we've got, and it's worth looking at both continuities and assessing all their feats because, let's be honest, there's not much compared to the main characters. Now this is where the fun begins, where we could really rank the humans. On Namek, Moro noted that he shared his energy with all the prisoners there. When Goku and Vegeta were fighting them off, they constantly were losing power and they dropped down to different forms. After being buffed by Moro, Saganbo was actually able to hurt Goku while in Super Saiyan 3. And when the 2 of them dropped back down to Super Saiyan, which they have perfect control of, mind you, they were struggling against just the regular prisoners. Not even named characters, just random fodder prisoners. So if you want to wank the prisoners here, that sounds really weird out of context, but anyways, all the prisoners at baseline are probably around Super Saiyan level once they're buffed by Moro. Not to mention, after the 2 months, Moro's gotten even more energy, so he could have buffed them even more beyond that. So it's probably even pretty conservative saying this, and clearly some of them are even stronger than that too. While Goku was caught off guard by transforming down into Super Saiyan 3 and was having his energy drained at the same time, still, the fact that Saganba was able to hurt him in Super Saiyan 3, it's definitely impressive. Although Saganba was clearly one of the strongest prisoners, so it's not like all of them scaled to his level. But the other named prisoners are important enough to be named, so they're clearly the stronger ones. And this whole time while Moro was gathering more energy and pillaging more planets, these were the guys doing it. They were getting stronger, getting more experience, probably getting buffed by Moro too with him sharing energy. So I think it's a fair baseline to say that these guys are around Super Saiyan Goku level, at least when they were fighting him on Namek. This is before his training with Maris. The reason I went off on that tangent is because all the humans were fighting against these guys and actually were able to contend with them. Krillin even defeated one pretty easily. Roshi actually fought off 3 prisoners while blindfolded, which of course can be attributed to his skill because he definitely has a ton of skill, but also his power does come into play here, since he was taking all of their attacks and was attacking them too, and was even noted to have gotten stronger from that. Unlike when he was fighting against Jiren in the manga where that was basically all his skill coming into play, there's actually power here because he's fighting them. And mind you, even before when he couldn't focus on them, he was able to hold them off in a 3v1 and he didn't die instantly, which is also a huge thing to note. So, as the 4th strongest human, we could say a reasonable level for him is Super Saiyan Goku post-tournament of power, which honestly might be pretty conservative here, and that's in the manga's continuity of course. But if the anime's events do follow the same story, that obviously makes this way more impressive with how much stronger the anime is. You could probably even highball him to Super Saiyan 2 Goku level. Next, let's go to Yamcha, who I'd say is the 3rd strongest human. He directly states that he is one of the 3 strongest humans, although I doubt he's stronger than Tien and Krillin. But one really impressive feat that he did was fighting off 3 prisoners at once. And he was really casual about it too. One funny thing to note is he defeated more people here than he did in the entirety of Dragon Ball Z. So if you ever think that Dragon Ball Super is disrespecting Yamcha, it's actually shown more respect to him if anything. Although later on when he did fight Xiaoyogi, I might be pronouncing his name wrong, Yamcha was struggling and did need Tien and Chiaotzu to help. And until Goku came in, they seemed to be clearly struggling against this guy. And also, we don't really know how much Chiaotzu did, but you can see in this panel, Yamcha and Tien are more damaged than him, although it might just be because Chiaotzu's farther in the back, but it's also reasonable to assume that these two are doing more than Chiaotzu. Tien even does state that they were having trouble against him, so this would clearly place these two below Krillin. But back to where Yamcha is. He struggled against one of the stronger named prisoners, but was able to defeat some of the random fodder ones pretty easily. And as mentioned before, the fodder ones could scale up to Super Saiyan Goku level. So I guess a conservative baseline here would be Yamcha's able to fight a Super Saiyan 2 level people. And we could put Yamcha at about Super Saiyan 2 Goku level, post-Tournament of Power and Broly movie. And I did cover Tien a bit, so let's cover him briefly. Since we've basically got most of his feats here. I mentioned the thing about him destroying parts of the tournament ground, and also him in this Galactic Patrol prisoner arc. It would be safe to say he's the 2nd strongest, definitely above Yamcha, but seemingly below Krillin too. Which I think is pretty strange because Krillin obviously did slack off in his training a bit, whereas Tien's constantly training, but I can't really argue with what's been said here. Also, Toriyama himself also seems to always acknowledge that Krillin's the stronger of the two. But it's safe to say that Tien's the 2nd strongest human. He doesn't really have much feats in the Moro arc because his only fight is that off-screen one with Yamcha. But using Yamcha as a scale, we could at least say he's at bare minimum Super Saiyan 2 Goku level in the manga. And again, assuming the anime follows these same events, that would also apply there, which would be even more impressive, but yeah, at a baseline, Super Saiyan 2 manga Goku level. And then there's Krillin, who's definitely the number 1 spot because he was fighting prisoners on his own. With struggle, he was able to defeat one of the other named prisoners, Yunba, who should be relative to Xiaoyogi, which means Krillin took on a fighter alone that took Yamcha, Tien, and Chiaotzu together to fight. But Krillin also has a pretty few big feats in the anime too. We want to focus on more modern things, so I'm not going to cover the stuff that he did in Tournament of Power. But to keep it short, he was the strongest human in Universe 7 during the Tournament of Power as well. But since we're focusing on current stuff, there's actually something even more current that we could take from. Dragon Ball Super's superhero. So besides the impressive stuff in the Moro arc, which we could probably even scale to Super Saiyan 3 Goku level, which I don't even think would be wank there, Superhero has an even better wank feat. So in the fight with Cell Max, Krillin not only keeps up with Android 18, but he even saves her at one point. His strongest attack, his Kienzan, actually was able to knock Cell Max back, and he didn't even hit Cell Max at his weak point. Now obviously the Kienzan is his strongest attack and is many times stronger than Krillin himself. But let's put this into perspective. Earlier in that same fight, Gamma 1 and 2's blasts were having the same exact effect on Cell Max. He was pretty unfazed by them, but when caught off guard, it actually did make him stumble a bit. And remember, the Gammas are always fighting at full power. They don't have infinite energy like the other androids, but they did note that they fight at their full strength at 100% of the time. At least when they have the energy to do so. So it's not like they were holding back here with their attacks. And it may be easy to gloss over this feat, but if you really want to wank Krillin, you could say Krillin's Kienzan is equal to Gamma 1 and 2's attacks. And I don't really need to describe how absurd of a feat that is. Again, it's worth mentioning, he caught Cell Max off guard and the Kienzan is his strongest attack. It's many times stronger than Krillin himself. But the Kienzan alone is able to match Gamma 1 and Gamma 2's power. And Gamma 2 is able to beat Power Awakened Piccolo, with Gamma 1 giving trouble to Ultimate Gohan. As for Krillin's base, we can't really say, but for his Kienzan, if you really want to wank him, his Kienzan could be Ultimate Gohan level. And this is the anime continuity, not the manga either, so that makes it even more impressive. So a reasonable level for the Moro arc, we could say he's stronger than Super Saiyan 3 Goku post-Tournament of Power. So let's go over a brief recap because I know we were jumping around a lot. The order we could rank the humans in is Krillin, then Tien, then Yamcha, then Roshi, then Chiaotzu. And then Yajirobe, I guess. For Chiaotzu, it's safe to put him at large planetary. For Roshi, bare minimum, he's stronger than base Buu-saga Gohan. And that's the absolute floor. In the Moro arc, we can compare him to Goku from the beginning of that arc in Super Saiyan, which would mean Roshi solos all of Dragon Ball Z pretty easily. Then beyond that is Yamcha, who's probably not too much stronger than Roshi, but notable enough for him to claim that he's confidently one of the 3 strongest. And we could place him probably around Super Saiyan 2 Goku level in that arc, with Tien being above Yamcha, probably a good amount stronger too. And then beyond that is Krillin, who I think a conservative estimate would be Super Saiyan 3 Goku level in the manga's continuity of the Moro arc, which might also apply to the anime too, but if you really want to wake Krillin, his Kionzan could probably hurt Ultimate Gohan. Pre-beast form, of course. But also, it might be strong enough to kill Power Awakened Piccolo in Superhero. Not hurt, not defeat, but probably kill if he lands it in the right spot. And obviously with base Buu-saga Gohan being the floor of their power, that means the base of their destructive power is large star level. But with them scaling way up to Goku's level in that arc too, while Goku was being weakened by Moro's energy absorption, I think that's offset by all the other fighters being stronger thanks to Moro giving them even more energy and having 2 months to prepare beyond that. Which would mean if we're comparing them to Goku in that current arc, you can easily scale them to galaxy level here. And I mean really easily scale them, and I feel like that's a conservative estimate for where they are. Even just focusing on the manga's continuity alone, we could put them there. But if we really wank them and really wank how strong Goku was during that fight on Namek, and how strong the Galactic Patrol prisoners are, I'm not saying I agree with this, but there is an argument to be made that you could possibly wank them to universe level. Probably even beyond that. But since we do want to be conservative here, I think putting them at multi-galaxy level is a really safe bet. And there's more than enough pieces of evidence to actually argue for that. But you also do have to remember at the very lowest low ball, they're large star level, thanks to that Gohan feat, which is consistent in the manga too because the manga follows the previous manga. So regardless of continuity, that feat with breaking Kachikashin applies. I know this video is pretty hectic jumping around a lot, but let me know what you guys think below. Did this change your outlook on the humans? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know. Although keep it civil because I know power scaling discussions get pretty heated. And it is my first time with a more serious power scaling video. But I wanted to put some respect on the humans, especially Yamcha because people kinda underestimate him. Anyways, hopefully y'all enjoyed, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on my next video.